If you've ever felt like your life was meant for more, this video is your confirmation. You're not hearing this by accident. This message didn't just show up in your feed for no reason. God doesn't waste words. God doesn't waste moments. God doesn't waste souls that are ready. Maybe you've been fighting in silence. Maybe you feel confused, exhausted, or disconnected from what you once believed was possible for you. And yet, here you are, listening to this because your spirit brought you here. Today, we're not going to talk about empty theories or shallow promises. Today, we're going to open a spiritual code, an ancient map that has been in your hands all along, even if you didn't know how to activate it. That code is hidden in Psalm 1. But Psalm 1 is not just a verse to memorize. It's a structure, a way of thinking, a divine design to rebuild from the inside what the world broke from the outside. And when you apply it, you don't just feel better. You heal, you flourish, you prosper, and everything you do begins to bear fruit. In this video, we're going to walk through it step by step, verse by verse, applying every line to your real life. We'll do it with a practical and spiritual lens, in the same spirit that Napoleon Hill used when he taught that every visible form of wealth is the result of an invisible structure in the mind. Today, you're going to build that structure. This is your moment. The moment you stop floating through life and decide to plant roots. Because you weren't created to chase life. You were created to flourish from your truth. And that process begins now. Welcome to Napoleon Inspires, the channel where we remember that success is not something you chase. It's something you activate from the soul. Before we go any further, I want you to do something symbolic. Write this in the comments or on a piece of paper. I am ready to flourish. Write it as an affirmation. Write it as a decision. Write it as a seed that declares, from today on, my life begins to grow roots. There's something nobody teaches you when you're a child. Poverty doesn't always begin in a bank account. It begins in the mind. It begins in what you tolerate, in what you repeat, and above all, in what you justify. There are thoughts that have lived in your mind for years, and you don't even know they're there. There are beliefs you inherited that you never questioned that today have become the invisible bars of your reality. Maybe you've been trying. You've worked harder, asked for more, repeated affirmations, visualized, prayed. And still, everything seems stuck, as if life doesn't respond. It's not because you don't deserve to prosper. It's not because you don't have faith. It's because your inner system is misaligned with the laws that govern true prosperity. Napoleon Hill called it the chaos of an undirected mind. That state where a person keeps repeating effort without direction, without deep conviction, without a spiritual structure holding them together. And the Bible explained it centuries earlier. In simpler words, but just as powerful. He who is not aligned is scattered. That's why today, we're not just going to talk about ideas. We're going to talk about roots. We're going to talk about the soil where everything begins. Because what you're living on the outside is nothing more than a reflection of what you're building on the inside. If the soil of your mind is full of wrong voices, inherited thoughts, and accumulated emotions, no fruit can stay firm. Psalm 1 was written precisely for this, to show you how to clean the soil, how to stop repeating mental cycles you didn't choose, and how to activate the spiritual structure that turns an ordinary person into an unstoppable tree. But before planting a new life, we have to pull out the dead roots. Today we're going to do that together, verse by verse, with clarity, with faith, with direction. Psalm 1 is not just an old prayer. It is a spiritual blueprint, a divine manual that clearly describes two paths and two outcomes. One leads to stability, fruit, and permanence. The other leads to chaos, exhaustion, and inner collapse. And here's the most striking part. Both paths begin in the mind. This is not about luck. This is not about religion. This is about thinking, focus, and an invisible structure. From the first verse, Psalm 1 presents a life decision. Will you live from roots or from reaction? Napoleon Hill taught the same principle. He said that every person is walking one of two roads: the path of a mind directed by purpose, or the path of a mind that drifts with no filter, no internal government. He called it drifting, that state where a person doesn't think clearly, doesn't question what enters their mind, and ends up living on autopilot, repeating thoughts that aren't even theirs. Psalm 1 describes the same reality, but it doesn't present it as philosophy. It presents it as a key that opens the structure of a righteous mind and reveals the power of building a life aligned with heaven. The psalm doesn't require you to understand everything. It asks for one thing. Choose. Will you keep absorbing without filtering, or will you begin to build from the inside out? Today you are about to discover how the righteous person thinks, and how that way of thinking allows them to flourish in every season. But you will also see what happens to the unrighteous, the one who walks through life without structure, without awareness, without roots. Not to condemn, but to awaken. Because at the end of this journey, you won't be the same. You will be righteous, not by moral label, but by mindset. Psalm 1 doesn't start by telling you what to do. It starts by showing you what you must not allow. And that, in itself, is divine wisdom. Because before you build a fruitful life, you must remove the dead roots. The verse says, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of mockers." Here we see 3 things the righteous avoid, and in each one, there is a spiritual trap disguised. First, he does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. Everything begins with a voice, an idea, a suggestion that looks harmless but isn't. The counsel of the wicked doesn't always sound evil. In fact, it usually sounds logical, common, even well-intentioned. Phrases like, "Be realistic," "Money is bad," "That's just how life is," "Deal with it," "Don't dream so big," sound familiar? Napoleon Hill warned that the human mind absorbs any idea repeated with emotion. And if that idea is not filtered, it becomes belief. Every belief becomes behavior, and every behavior becomes destiny. The righteous don't allow just any word to enter their mind. They are guardians of their attention because they know chaos begins with one unchallenged sentence. Second, they do not stand in the path of sinners. First, you hear the counsel. If you don't filter it, you end up walking in that direction. It's no longer just an idea. It becomes a lifestyle, a habit, a routine, a new normal you've accepted. This is the danger of adaptation. The mind gets used to what it should have rejected. What is abnormal becomes comfortable, and what is comfortable becomes normal. Napoleon Hill said the greatest enemy of success is not failure. It's the mental comfort zone, that state where you don't question, you don't grow, you survive, but you don't flourish. And the most dangerous part? You don't even notice. Because it doesn't look wrong anymore, it just looks common. But common has never been the same as correct. Third, they do not sit in the seat of mockers. This is the deepest level of mental contamination. You no longer just hear. You no longer just walk. Now you sit. You settle. You identify. You belong to the wrong environment. The seat of mockers is the place where faith is ridiculed. Purpose is minimized, and spiritual truth becomes a joke. It's not always a physical chair. Sometimes it's a group chat. Sometimes it's a social media feed. Sometimes it's a podcast. Sometimes it's the conversations you keep going back to. Napoleon Hill called this the wandering mind, the state where you no longer filter, no longer choose, no longer think. You just absorb. And when that happens, you lose sensitivity. You lose direction. You lose roots. This is why the righteous separate. Not because they think they're better than others, but because they recognize their mind as sacred ground. They understand that all prosperity is born from a thought, and every thought is a seed. If the seed is contaminated, the fruit will be too. So if you want to flourish, you must first close the door to the counsel that weakens you, the paths that distract you, and the environments that corrupt you. Do it as a conscious act, not out of fear, but from conviction. Right now, take out your notebook, a journal, or your phone notes and write. From today on, I filter what I think. My mind is sacred ground. Don't write it as a ritual. Write it as a standard, a new spiritual level, because everything you allow in your mind will eventually grow roots. And if you're going to plant something, let it be truth. Let it be purpose. Let it be power. A mind that is empty is not a free mind. It is a vulnerable mind. That's why Psalm 1 doesn't just tell you what to avoid. It also tells you what to embrace, what to plant, what to repeat, what to bring to full bloom. It's not enough to remove mental contamination. You have to nourish the soil with truth. The verse says, "But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night." Here we're given two actions that define the righteous person, two spiritual practices that transform your inner structure. First, he delights in the truth. The word delight here is key. It doesn't say he reads the law or that he merely knows about it. It says his delight is in it. He enjoys it. He seeks it. He longs for it. He honors it, not as an obligation, but as nourishment for his inner world. Just as your body needs food, your soul needs direction, and your mind needs structure. Napoleon Hill taught that conscious autosuggestion is one of the pillars of success. Repeating powerful ideas daily, declaring them with emotion, programming the subconscious mind with truth. And that is exactly what Psalm 1 teaches. 1,000 years earlier, the law of the Lord is not a cold list of rules. It is a flow of eternal wisdom, a divine frequency, an ordering energy, and whoever connects to it begins to flourish from the inside out. Second, he meditates day and night. Here lies one of the most ignored secrets of all: spiritual consistency. This is not a Sunday thought. It's not a cute quote for Instagram. It's a lifestyle. The righteous person meditates on truth day and night, which means consistently, deliberately, without abandoning the process internally. Meditating is not just sitting in silence. Meditating is repeating, contemplating, holding a truth in your mind until it replaces the lie. Napoleon Hill said, "Every dominant thought, repeated with emotion, becomes a conviction, and every conviction becomes reality." That's why the righteous are transformed. Not because they are lucky, but because they train. While others rehearse worry, the righteous rehearse promise. While others repeat complaints, the righteous repeat vision. While others repeat chaos, the righteous declare order. That's what meditation truly is. It's not a passive state. It's an active exercise of inner construction. And the more you do it, the more your emotional state changes, the more your reactions change, the more your direction in life shifts. If you want to flourish, you need a spiritual mental routine. One moment every morning to declare. One moment every night to remember. A daily space to plant truth and water it with intention. Do this now. Think of one sentence that connects you with purpose, just one, and repeat it every morning and every night for the next 7 days. That is meditation, because your mind is a field, and the seed you water the most is the one that will bear fruit. When a mind is cleaned of toxicity and filled with truth, it doesn't have to try to bear fruit. The fruit comes by itself. Verse 3 of Psalm 1 says, "He will be like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. And whatever he does prospers." This is not just a promise. It is a spiritual description of the righteous person, a clear image of what happens in a mind trained with intention. And it's time you start seeing yourself this way. As a tree doesn't run. It doesn't compete. It doesn't panic with the wind. A tree is planted with roots, with weight, with permanence, and not just anywhere, but by streams of water, in constant contact with its source. Napoleon Hill taught that real success doesn't depend on external motivation, but on connection to an inner source. That source is your purpose, your truth, your root. If your mind is connected to that stream, it doesn't matter how dry the world looks outside. Your soul remains nourished. This is essential. The righteous don't panic. They don't live in comparison. They don't demand instant fruit. They understand cycles. They trust the process. They know if the seed is good and the root is firm, the fruit is inevitable. Napoleon Hill called it the law of the harvest. Every action born from a dominant thought, sustained by faith, ends up producing a real result. Not at the rhythm of your impatience, but at the rhythm of growth. The leaf represents endurance. While many start strong, and fade away. The righteous stay, because their nourishment doesn't come from applause. It comes from the source. Their stability doesn't depend on the environment. It depends on their roots. And those roots are what allow them to keep believing when others give up. Keep sowing when there are no signs yet. Keep growing when everything seems paused on the outside. Napoleon Hill described this as spiritual self-sufficiency. That state where you no longer need the world to hold you up, because you've built an unshakable mind. And here's the final result in that verse. Not some things, not only spiritual things. Whatever he does prospers, because everything born from an ordered mind eventually creates transformation. This is not magic. It's law. It's structure. It's roots. The righteous prosper not because of luck, but because their mind is aligned. When you think with clarity, you act with direction. And when you act with direction, you build consistent results. Right now, declare this out loud or write it down. I'm like a tree. I am planted. I am connected. I am ready to bear fruit. This is not poetry. It's identity. And from today on, it's your new way of walking through life. Up to this point, Psalm 1 has shown us the path of the righteous. A life of conscious separation, constant meditation, connection to the source, and inevitable fruit. But now the tone shifts. Verse 4 introduces the other path. The path of the mind without structure. The life without roots. Not so the wicked. They're like chaff that the wind blows away. What is chaff? It's the empty shell of the grain. The leftovers. The light part, without weight, without substance, without direction. It has no roots. It has no strength. So any wind can carry it away. Napoleon Hill explained the same concept. He called it drifting. That mental state where you no longer think with intention, where you let yourself be moved by your environment, by emotion, by criticism, by approval, by fear. The drifter, the wicked in this sense, is not always a morally evil person. They're a disconnected person, disconnected from their inner structure, from clear direction, from purpose. They react instead of build. Today they believe. Tomorrow they doubt. Today they act. Tomorrow they stop. Today they promise. Tomorrow they quit. Everything they do lacks roots. And without roots, there can be no lasting fruit. There's movement, but no direction. Effort, but no fulfillment. Noise, but no peace. From the outside, the unrighteous person may look busy, even successful by worldly standards. But inside, there's emptiness, anxiety, instability. Why? Because their mind hasn't been planted, hasn't been cared for, hasn't been directed. And what is not directed is eventually shattered. Napoleon Hill said, "The greatest mistake of a human being is to live without a definite purpose. Without purpose, everything affects you, everything changes you, everything controls you." And that's how many people live today. Changing ideas every week, jumping from emotion to emotion, chasing things without knowing why, wanting a harvest without planting any roots. The image is clear. The righteous is a tree. The unrighteous is chaff. One remains. The other floats. One is connected to the source. The other depends on the climate, the news, the trends. One trains to endure. The other reacts and eventually disappears. This is not condemnation. It's a mirror. It's an invitation to evaluate your mental state today. Are you planted or are you floating? Are you connected to the source or trying to recharge from empty places? Are you sowing with intention or just reacting to whatever happens? Because this truth is unshakable. Everything without roots vanishes. The good news? You can choose to plant now. You're not late. You can still build an inner structure that won't fall apart in the next storm. And that's what we're continuing to do, verse by verse. There are moments in life when you are tested without warning, moments where there is no time to get ready. You have to already be strong. Psalm 1 puts it this way, "Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous." This judgment is not only something eternal, it's also the daily judgment of life. That day when you lose a job, when a relationship breaks, when illness arrives, when betrayal hits, when debt chokes, When crisis knocks on your door, it's that moment when everything shakes on the outside, and the only thing that can hold you is what you've built on the inside. Napoleon Hill explained it like this: a mind without a definite purpose is like a building without a foundation. It may look solid, but one storm is enough to bring it down. The unrighteous don't stand, not because they are physically weak, but because they never built spiritual roots. They didn't protect their mind. They didn't solidify their purpose. They didn't cultivate their focus. They didn't meditate on truth. So when the day of testing came, there was nothing inside to sustain them. But the righteous do stand, because their strength doesn't come from circumstances or from momentary motivation. It comes from what they already planted inside. When chaos comes, the righteous don't collapse. They anchor themselves, because they're not depending on moods. They're connected to the source. Napoleon Hill called this trained mental discipline, a mind that prepared itself when everything was calm, so it could remain firm when everything shakes. The verse adds, "Nor will sinners stand in the assembly of the righteous." This is not about religious exclusion. It's about a level of consciousness. The assembly of the righteous is a spiritual environment, a frequency, a space, where minds living by principles gather. Whoever has not built inner structure cannot remain there, not because they're banned, but because they can't sustain it. Napoleon Hill spoke of this as a spiritual law of attraction. You don't attract what you wish. You attract what you are. If you think in chaos, you attract chaotic environments. If you're rooted in truth, you attract spaces, people, and opportunities aligned with that truth. That's why this is urgent. Don't wait for the storm to want order. Don't wait for the crisis to seek roots. Don't wait for the collapse to begin building. Start now. Start today. Because the invisible judgment is not punishment. It's a mirror. And when it arrives, it won't matter what you say. What will matter is what you've sown. Declare this with strength. When the test comes, I will already be planted. My structure will be stronger than any storm. After showing us the difference between the righteous and the wicked, Psalm 1 ends with a truth that changes everything. A sentence that quietly sustains the righteous in silence, in struggle, in process. It says, "For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction." This sentence is everything. Here is the certainty your soul has been searching for. You are not walking alone. You are not building in the dark. You are not sowing in vain. God knows your path. In the language of Scripture, to know is not just to have information. It means to be involved, present, personally engaged with divine intention. Napoleon Hill described something very similar when he spoke of infinite intelligence, a field of eternal wisdom that responds to those who think with faith, act with purpose, and align their mind with universal principles. He said that when a person is truly focused, ideas appear, solutions arrive, circumstances line up, as if the universe were cooperating with their cause. And that's exactly what Psalm 1 is revealing. Your path is not random. It is guided. The righteous don't need to see the whole map. They just need to know God is ahead of them. That certainty makes them stable, firm, unstoppable. While the wicked react to chaos, the righteous walk in peace, because their security is not in the environment or in immediate results, but in the invisible backing that guides them from within. This is the law of spiritual attraction. You attract what you're ready to sustain. If your mind has been ordered, if your roots have been strengthened, if your thoughts have been planted in truth, everything you need will come in its time. And it won't just come. It will come multiplied, with purpose, with divine confirmation. So if you've been doubting, if you've felt invisible, if you've questioned whether your effort is worth it, remember this. The Lord knows your path. He supports it. He blesses it. He clears what doesn't belong. He straightens it when you align. Nothing has been lost. Nothing has been in vain. Nothing has slipped away from God's knowledge. Declare this now. My path is being guided from above. I don't have to force. I just have to align. Walk in faith. Walk with purpose. Because even if you can't see everything today, you're already on the right path. And that path is known by God. You made it this far, and that means something. You could have scrolled away. You could have closed this video. You could have gone back to distraction, but something in you chose to stay. And that says more about you than you realize. It means you're ready. Ready to stop repeating cycles. Ready to stop living in survival mode. Ready to become a tree. Now that you've seen the full map of Psalm 1, there is no confusion. There are only two paths, two types of minds, two destinies, tree or chaff, roots or reaction, permanence or collapse. And the difference is not luck. It's decision. It's not about how many mistakes you made. It's not about whether yesterday you were drifting. It's about what you decide to plant today. A tree is not born big, not born strong, not born full of fruit. A tree is born with one thing: roots. Those roots go down in silence. They go down with intention. They are strengthened with discipline. They are fed with truth. Napoleon Hill said, "The mind needs daily direction. Otherwise, it becomes a tool of chaos." That's why today it's not enough to feel inspired. Today you must decide, because chaff feels light too. But that lightness is not freedom. It's vulnerability. It's lack of weight, lack of purpose, lack of structure. It's the kind of mind that cannot hold a promise, cannot sustain a vision, cannot build anything lasting. And you can no longer afford that. Not if you want purposeful prosperity. Not if you want real peace. Not if you're tired of watching days pass without roots. Your moment is now. Not when you have more time. Not when everything falls into place. Now, right where you are, with what you have, with what you know. Because if God brought you this far, it's because you already have enough to begin flourishing. And it all starts with one decision, one sentence, one affirmation that transforms your identity at the core. Write this in the comments, in your journal, or say it out loud. I'm a firm tree planted in truth. Not as a cute phrase, as a spiritual declaration, a position, a standard, a new beginning. If doubts still whisper inside you, remember this. A tree doesn't look for shade. It gives shade. A tree doesn't chase applause. It produces fruit. A tree doesn't need to be seen to grow. It only needs to stay connected to the source. And you're already in that process because you have chosen to meditate, to plant, to filter, to persist. What if one day you forget? What if one day you fall? You return to the root. You return to the beginning. You return to Psalm 1. And you declare again, I am a firm tree planted in truth. Napoleon Hill taught this in another way. Lasting success is the result of the intentional repetition of a focused thought. So repeat it. Don't get tired. Don't let go. Don't abandon your mind to what's common. Where there are roots, there will be fruit. Where there is intention, there will be transformation. You are not the chaos you inherited. You're not the phrases others drilled into you. You're not the environment that shaped you. You're fertile ground, and you're already beginning to flourish. Today you chose it. Today you affirmed it. Today you activated it. If you've come this far, you didn't just watch a video. You walked a spiritual map, verse by verse, layer by layer, from roots to fruit. That journey wasn't random. It was confirmation. Confirmation that you're ready. That your soul can't tolerate drifting anymore. That your spirit craves stability. That you're no longer willing to live without roots. So before we close, I want you to do one last symbolic act. Subscribe right now to this channel, Napoleon Inspires. But don't do it out of routine. Do it as a public declaration of your new identity. As a visible act that confirms the invisible. Every time someone subscribes here, we're not adding a number. We're planting a seed, a root, an intention, a yes to the process, a yes to truth. This channel, Napoleon Inspires, is not here to entertain. It exists to awaken, to train minds, to build roots, and to remind the world that true success is born from within. Here we don't just repeat ideas. Here we plant transformation. And that transformation began today with you. If this message echoed inside you, if something lit up in your heart, if you felt this was more than content, then plant this truth in others. Share this video with someone you love, someone who needs to refocus their mind. Step out of chaos, and remember that they were created to flourish. Every time you share truth, you are sowing wisdom, and whoever sows wisdom never reaps emptiness. Now, to seal everything we've planted together, I want to guide you through a declaration. This is not a traditional prayer. It's a spiritual affirmation, a position, a root that goes deep and refuses to let go. If you can close your eyes, breathe, and repeat this with me. I'm a firm tree, planted in truth. I was created on purpose and for a purpose. Every thought I allow into my mind either bears fruit or creates chaos. From today on, I filter what I hear. I guard what I speak. I protect what I think. My mind is sacred ground, and I only sow what builds, what heals, what aligns. I will not be carried by the wind. I will not be intimidated by pressure. I will not be controlled by emotion. My roots go deeper than my fear. My faith is stronger than my past. My vision is clearer than any distraction. I am constant meditation. I am defined purpose. I am focused thought. I am action with direction. And everything I do will prosper. That wasn't just a phrase. It was a construction. If you repeat it every day, it will reorder your inner system, clean the field, and strengthen your roots. And when the day of testing comes, you will remain. So remember, it doesn't matter how many times you've drifted, how many seasons without fruit you've endured, or how many ideas you've inherited without filtering. You can choose a new structure, a new frequency, new roots. Leave it written below in the comments. I am a firm tree, planted in truth, so that anyone who comes to read them doesn't find noise, judgment, or confusion, but a forest, a community of trees, men and women who chose to flourish with purpose, who chose awareness over reaction, who walk with direction, because they know their path is known by God. This is Napoleon Inspires, a channel not created to distract you, but to awaken you, to train your mind, to form roots, to remind you that real success is born from within. Here, we don't just talk about change. We activate it, and that activation has already begun in you.